Next, with my guest Eric Domergue from Generali Investments, we'll be looking at risks and challenges for fixed income investments. What can be the adverse consequences of some of these central bank actions, Eric? What about lack of liquidity? Could there be more flash crashes to come, for instance?
Yes, indeed. There are three factors to monitor. Central bank policies have been providing liquidity to the market, but also by purchasing some assets like sovereign debt, ABS covered, and now credit for the ECB. They are drying liquidity in the secondary market. So we find with another second factor that the regulation is making more expensive for banks to do their daily market making activity. So they are not providing any more liquidity to the secondary market. And the third factor is that investors are one-way positioning. We have seen it in the US market in October 2014 and also in Europe in April 2015, where due to the accommodative policy of the ECB in Europe, every investor was invested in govies, and suddenly, due to some surprise on the macroeconomic figures, the yield go up quite massively.
There's a huge number of potential risks now affecting the markets, both political and economic. I mean, how do we quantify some of these there's these potential clouds on the horizon? There's a possibility of Brexit, the possibility of adverse result in the US elections. How will that potentially affect the bond market?
In fact, political risk is the main risk factor, actually, especially in Europe, but also, as you said, in US, where we will have some presidential election in November, and we can hear some declarations that are taken badly by the investors. But in Europe, we have the Brexit referendum on the 23rd of June, and 3 days later, the Spanish elections. And also the negotiation between IMF, the European Commission, and Greece. On that topic, it's improving, but on the first two topics, we could have some volatility in the several weeks until the end of June. And beside the Brexit risk, we have some fundamental economical consequences, but also the project of Europe can be put into question by investors, and this will be followed by outflows from foreign investors. So this is something that we monitor closely and that we take into account into our recommendation, and that's why right now we have decided to become neutral on peripheral debt.
And Eric, you mentioned some fundamental economic problems, the potential slowdown of manufacturing in the US. What kind of effect can that have?
Yeah, on the US, we expect that the next survey concerning the manufacturing sector will be worse than expected. So the manufacturing sector has been penalized by the strength of the dollar. Now the dollar is stabilizing, but the demand from trading partners like Asia and especially China and Europe is weak. And also, if you look at the banking survey in the US, banks are tightening their lending conditions. So it should be negative for the manufacturing sector. But you have to keep in mind that the manufacturing sector only represents 10 to 15% of US GDP, and that right now there is no contagion to the service sector, which is improving, and especially the construction sector. So we expect that if there is no contagion, the US will not go into recession.